She got it. Okay.
Okay. So we're starting the recording now. Mike, if you want to open up.
Charlie, make a note of the time. We're starting the meeting for the official record.
Okay. 7:15. Oh, Justin?
Yes. Hi.
You have to give me the ability to advance the slides.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Mike, you want to say anything else, or should I just get right to it?
It's kind of strange talking into a computer. I don't have any prepared remarks actually, but I encourage everybody to send me or anybody else emails of concerns, and we can discuss business as a board, new and old.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. We also have the website where
yes.
New people can ask questions and get answers from the more experienced members. So maybe Justin can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So for anyone that isn't aware, we have a lot of resources posted on the website. I've recently, in light of COVID, uploaded some books on beekeeping that I happen to have. It's also the place where you'll find presentations given by beekeepers. Anything that we attach in the emails all gets thrown in there. We will, for the first time, be having another meeting this Thursday at 7 o'clock. You use the same link, it's the same exact platform, and that will be a beginners only meeting. There is no special speaker or special topic. We are just taking beginner questions, answering them, and spending a little bit of time trying to help everyone who's starting the season in these very unseasonal conditions.
No kidding.
Yeah, both weather-wise and infectious-wise. So, you're welcome to attend both or neither. Both sessions will be recorded, so this is currently being recorded, and you can watch the meeting again afterwards. I believe that I sent out a link for the last month's meeting, and we're going to keep doing that. So if you miss these meetings or you want to watch something over again, you can. If there are any questions, type them, say them, either or.
Okay. Shall I get started?
Oh, hold on.
Can I do a treasure?
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
And do a treasurer's report?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. There's not much going on. Our opening balance was $8,100.85. Our closing balance was only $8,202.85. So the net's $102 this month. I am using our debit card on the state level because we've converted to all branches are doing their own membership renewals and new members and whatnot online, as opposed to sending everything up to the state. But being that not everybody has a debit card and they can't put new members on, they're calling me and sending me the money. I'm putting it in our checking account and then using our checking account to debit it. So it's a wash, it's an in and out. And I have all the backup documentation on that. Net over the past 2 months, we've made $700 from our nuke sale. And I got the money deposited for the two meetings that we did have of $94 in cash to replenish the pizza monies. And other than that, I'm going to try and get a better handle on membership counts going forward, and see if we can try and get to increase the memberships. So, but other than that, unless anybody has any questions, and Charlie, I'll send you a report. I'll send you that report.
All right. Um, is that it?
I think that's it. I think you can start.
Okay.
I just posted the link to our website in the chat. It's ecbs.njbeekeepers.org. You can find any kind of useful links on there, including we have posted in 2 places on the site a direct link to apiary registration for the Department of Ag. Make sure you get that done. And I think that Landi, you're good to start.
Okay. So tonight I'm going to be talking about nucleus colonies. The questionnaire that Justin sent out a few months ago asking people what they're interested in learning about, this was one of the top topics. So because I do a lot of nukes and I consider them really an integral part of my management, I figured I would share with you, you know, how exactly I do manage them. So 10 to 20% of many beekeepers' operations at least is nukes. Mine is probably closer to a third. So I keep a lot of nukes around and I use them on a regular basis. Now, last year we had the new regulations, and in the regulations, it says that on a quarter of an acre, you're allowed 3 full-size hives plus 1 nucleus colony for every 2 full-size hives. Okay, so if you've got a half acre, that means you can have 6 production colonies and 3 nukes. And what it says about nukes is actually a little bit confusing. So I'm glad that Megan is with us. Our state apiarist is in this meeting tonight. And I don't want to put her on the spot because I suspect she's as confused as I am, since I brought this question up to her just the other day. And the two of us were scratching our heads about it. So the law says, for every 2 colonies permitted on a tract of land, there may be maintained upon the same tract 1 nucleus colony with no supers attached from March 1st through October 31st. Any additional nucleus colonies shall be moved to another location, tract, or combined with a colony on the same property within 90 days after the date made or acquired. So that's actually kind of confusing if you think about it. It could mean that you're allowed 1 nuke for every 2 production colonies during the growing season, and they're not permitted to have supers on. But after October 31st, they can have supers. Or it could mean you're allowed to have 1 nuke per every 2 production colonies up to October 31st, and after that time, no nukes. So no nukes in the winter and 1 nuke for 2 hives during the growing season. And we're pretty sure that that is what was intended, is that latter interpretation. But regardless of whether it's the one way or the other way, not permitting us to super nukes is not a good thing, because nukes do swarm. So I think the state is looking at nukes as being temporary resource reservoirs that you make if you catch a swarm, for instance, or you make as a small split to help reduce swarming, but not to be maintained as a nuke, and supered as a nuke and overwintered as a nuke. So that's something that perhaps we want to maybe try and get revised. At least that's something that I'd like to see revised. Megan, you with us? Do you want to comment on this at all? She's muted, but she'll probably come on. She's still muted. There she is. Nope,
That's me.
that's you. Okay. Maybe she went to get a drink
Yeah.
of something.
Just keep going on. We can revisit
Okay.
that.
All right. All right. When she comes back, maybe we'll get her to comment. So aside from that, I'm just going to talk about how I manage my nukes. And I have to make the comment that I'm not a hobbyist beekeeper, and I'm actually not subject to any of the regulations that we have at the state level because my operation is a commercial farm. So I don't follow those regs. I'm not required by law to follow the regs. So I have a lot of nukes, and I'm just going to share with you how I manage them. And say perhaps, for instance, if someone had a half-acre plot with 6 hives, rather than having 6 production hives, maybe you would have 4 production hives and additional nucleus colonies, or super the 2 nukes that you would be permitted with 6 hives. 3 nukes you'd be permitted with 6 hives. Okay, so but we can talk about that at another time and get clarification on it. A nucleus colony is a reservoir of resources. That is how I view nukes. They are small colonies, but I look at them as a way to store and create queens, brood, nurse bees, honey, and pollen. And I can use those resources anywhere in my operation that I need them. So I could requeen a colony that has a bad queen. If I have a weak colony, maybe somebody swarmed late in the season and it doesn't look like they're going to be strong enough to make it through the winter, I can give them frames of brood and bees from a nuke. I can take frames of brood and bees from very strong production colonies and make nukes out of them to reduce the strength of those production colonies so that they don't swarm. This coming week, I'm going to be making up some 30 or 40 mating nukes because I just started a batch of queens last week, and I'm going to need mating nukes to put the cells in to raise the queens. Replacing winter deadouts. I didn't buy any swarms, any packages, any nukes from anybody else because I had my own nukes. And if you are increasing your colony numbers, if you want to grow your operation, obviously making nukes is a great way to do that. And you can sell them. So let's look at each of these individually in a little bit more detail. Requeening with a nuke is by far the best possible way to requeen. And sometimes it's the only way to successfully introduce a queen. For instance, if you're trying to requeen a colony, a large colony in dearth, when there's no food coming in and you've got like a huge hive whose queen just ran out of sperm, you may only be, you can throw a whole bunch of queens at them, and when there's no nectar coming in, they're far more likely to kill the queen and reject her. But if you put her in with her own bees, surrounded by her own bees and her own brood, it's an almost foolproof way of introducing a new queen. And if you've got a colony that maybe had a drone layer and you were, when you're new, you're always going to hope that the next time you go back and look in that hive, it's going to look better. But the truth of the matter is that once she starts to run out of sperm, or if she didn't mate well in the first place, it's never going to look better. It's only going to get worse. So in the meantime, your colony is making more and more drones. Your queen is laying, fewer and fewer worker eggs. and it's getting weaker and weaker and more demoralized, and there are fewer foragers going out getting resources. So it's becoming quite weak. If you requeen it with a nuke, you find the old bad queen and you kill her and you introduce a nuke. Not only are you giving them a good queen, but you're also strengthening them. So you're giving them the resources to build up so that they're strong enough for the winter and they're able to bring in enough food to make it through the winter. Same thing. If you've got a weak colony that is coming into the major nectar flows, which is this time of year, if we ever get enough weather, decent enough that we can actually go out, our bees can actually go out and bring anything in. Nukes are like a bee production factory. So you can take frames of bees and brood and put them in colonies that you want to harvest a nectar source to make those colonies stronger so that they will produce more honey for you. Of course, you risk swarming. And that's the next main way in which you can use nukes. Before the nectar flows come, so early in the season, which would have been a month ago or more, March, April, you make up your quota of nukes for the season by taking brood and bees from your strongest colonies. So you're knocking them down a little bit and using that on top of swarm control methods like reversing your brood boxes and hopefully preventing swarming. It's just another tool to help you prevent swarming in your operation. Mating nukes. I think everybody at some point, if you get an opportunity to do it, raising queens using the Doolittle method, grafting, or even if you don't graft, even if you've got a nice strong colony with swarm cells, you can harvest those swarm cells and put them in mating nuclei, make up mating nukes and let them fly and mate. And now you've got, brand new queens that you've done yourself. So either you can graft or you can use any other number of raising queen cells and put them into nukes that you've made, queenless nukes, and let them hatch out. And now you've got, a nice new colony, a nice new nuke. So this is one of my favorite things to do. I love this. You can use nukes to make nukes. So I raised, let me think. I had 40 something nukes that I overwintered. I had 100% survival of my nukes over the course of the winter. I sold about 30 of those nukes. That left me with a dozen nukes, okay, which I put all the extra boxes on. So each of these dozen nukes that I have left is maybe 7 boxes high. And when my queen cells are ready, I'll split those. So I'll have 12 queen right nukes and another 5 times 12, 60 boxes that are queenless that I can put the queen cells in and have those queens, those virgin queens fly and mate from. And in the meantime, the queens that I have in these 12 stacks are producing brood. So each of those mating nukes will have brood and food and resources, bees, to take care of that virgin queen. What I love about doing that is that it doesn't compromise honey production. So I'm not taking any resources from the colonies that are producing my honey crop for the year. I'm taking resources only from existing nukes. And of course, replacing winter losses. You overwinter the nuke, which I'm going to tell you how to do, and maybe in New Jersey we'll actually be permitted to do that if we can get clarification on the regs, and or hopefully.
Landi, I'm
yes.
just going to stop you for a second. You've got some questions.
Oh, okay.
Can you see them, or would you like me to read them to you?
Okay, let's look at them. Most of our members have less than half an acre, maybe even less than a quarter acre. Okay. Yes, in Essex County, a lot of our members have small plots, but that is, this is, I'm just outlining what the law says. 3 colonies for every quarter acre. I love to build comb in my nukes. That is another, yes. Lisa, you're absolutely right. It's a great way to draw a foundation, especially during the nectar flows. Do you buy the queens to go into the nukes you make in the spring? No, I do not. I raise the queens, but you could buy them. You could do it either way. And do you put 5 full frames in the nuke or less to prevent swarming? You can put as many frames in the nuke as you like. The more frames you put in the nuke, the more ability you have to prevent swarming. So the more likely you are to actually prevent a swarm. And you may have to keep doing it. Okay, so replacing winter losses. Let's talk about making up these nukes. What is the best way to make up a nuke? Mine are all medium boxes. So I'm talking about a 5 medium frame nuke. Most of you will be making 5 deep frame nukes, but you can do it either way. So the most important component is capped and emerging brood with young nurse bees. What is a queen right nuke? A queen right nuke is a nuke that has a mated queen in it. Very simple. And we'll be talking about that a little bit more, Barbara. You may have, if depending on whether you're raising a queen in this nuke or not raising a queen, you may or may not have eggs and very young milk brood. We call milk brood is larvae that are just a day or two old that are floating in a pool of royal jelly, okay, or milk. That people who produce queens call that milk brood. Food. Always have to have food, nectar or uncapped honey and pollen. It's easier for the bees to access open nectar. So if you have a choice between giving them a frame of capped honey or giving them a frame of open cells with nectar in it, pick the nectar. Drawn mostly empty comb. If you are raising queens and you're using this as a mating nuke, you will need to have at least some empty comb for the queen to start laying. And an additional frame of food or a division board feeder that you can put syrup into, depending on the time of year and the purpose of your nuke. But basically you need at least 2 frames of capped brood with the bees attached, with the young nurse bees, or they're just a little bit older than nurse bees because they're not on open brood, but they're still very young and they're taking care of that brood, keeping it warm. That's the most important component. When to make nukes. The timing is really, really important. And when you make them is a function of why you're making them. So if you're going to make, are you talking deeps or mediums? Could be either one. Deeps or mediums. if you're going to use them to replace winter losses or build your number of colonies, near the end of the major nectar flows is when you want to make the nukes. So you take, preferably, you're going to try and take advantage of the tail end of the nectar flows where it's not going to impact your honey production, but get them going. And then you're going to feed them and build them up so that they overwinter. For swarm control, 3 to 4 weeks before the major nectar flows, and again during the flows. So you're taking bees out of your production hives to reduce their urge to swarm, to reduce congestion. And for queen production or storage of replacement queens, right smack during the major nectar flows and into early summer. So the very, very best time to create queen-right nukes where you're raising your own queens and they're mating, flying, is during the nectar flows, the peak nectar flows. So we have two kinds of nukes. Barbara asked about queen-right nukes, and that's one of the two kinds. You either have a caged queen in there, or you've got a queen cell. Okay, so this is how you position the frames. You always have the food on the outside. You want to position them so so that it's as close to the way the bees would do it as you can manage. So they put the food on the outside, and then the next one in is going to be a frame of pollen. Keep the brood together. So capture an emerging brood, couple of frames right next to the food, next to the pollen, if you can. Open drawn comb for the queen to lay. So this is a nuke that you've given a queen in a cage, or you've given a queen cell, a mating nuke, so that that queen cell is going to emerge. The virgin will fly off, mate, come back and start laying. And if you need a pollen patty, you don't have a lot of pollen in there. Okay, I see Ron's question, and I'll get to that in just a sec, Ron, okay? Because it's a really good question, and you're right. If you don't have a lot of pollen, give them a pollen patty. This time of year, we typically don't need to do that. And you've got to take this nuke after you've made it up from the bees in your apiary and move it somewhere. Why do you have to move it? Because the bees will go back to the original hive. And we talk about bees staying with the brood, and some bees at least will stay with the brood, but I have seen bees totally abandon even the brood and go back to the original hive. They don't usually do that, but sometimes they do. Even if it's more than just 2 frames of brood, I've seen it, Pat. It doesn't happen real often, but you're always on the safe side if you take that box of bees away from the hive that they were created in, even if it's just for a day or two, and then bring them back if you want to. And to answer Ron's question, Ron says, this year I've been seeing or hearing about lots and lots of swarms about now, dramatically more than in previous years. Why? My opinion on that is that we had a very, very warm March, very mild winter, and a very warm March. It looked like it was going to be a super early spring. And the bees built up during that really warm month. So most of my production colonies are in 3 mediums. I'm going to say about half of them are now in 4 mediums. I had to give these bees a whole box of empty drawn brood comb because I had nothing to reverse to. You know, as I was like reversing my brood boxes, there was brood all the way up. In all 3 boxes, I had brood. So in order to prevent swarming, I had to give that queen an empty box to lay in. And now I've got, bees just hives loaded with bees and almost no food. Very, very little food, because as soon as we hit April, the temperature dropped incredibly. The wind came up, it started raining, and it's been like insane, crazy conditions. So as soon as there's a halfway sunny day, the bees are like, I'm out of here. They're so overcrowded in those hives. What's interesting, though, is that they haven't been able to get out and access the food. But they built up and built up and built up, and there's just a huge amount of congestion, and I think that that's why we've got so many swarms. Bon says he has one hive that has five full boxes with cap brood. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Nuke with cage queen or queen cell. We looked at that, and here's the next one. You can get a nuke in the prime nectar flows. So forget this May, maybe the last half of this May, but May and June in our area are typically the prime nectar flows. You can get this nuke to raise their own queen. So you're not giving them a queen cell. You're not giving them a mated queen in a cage. You're getting them to raise their own queen. I guess people call this a walkaway split now. What is an after swarm? Jackie asks. I'll tell you in a minute, okay? I'm looking at all these comments here. Wait a minute. I don't have to answer all of these, do I, Justin?
No. You're the speaker. You can ignore everyone if you want.
Okay, I'm ignoring you guys. I love you, but I'm ignoring you, or I'll never get through this.
Landi, you can just come back at the end. And once again, if anybody has any questions that don't get answered in this time, don't forget, we have a second meeting on Thursday specifically for questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Jackie wanted to know what an after swarm is. I'm going to answer that. An after swarm happens when you have, actually probably happens more than we think. So primary swarm is when the bees split and roughly 60-70% of them go off with the existing old queen, and the remaining bees raise a new queen from the queen cells that they have in the hive. And after swarm happens in very strong congested colonies, and they go off with a virgin. So as soon as those virgins start hatching out, a virgin will take off with more bees. So after swarms tend to be a lot smaller. And of course, that virgin, once they settle in their new home, has to fly and mate. And hives can cast multiple after swarms. Keep keeping bees and you will see it. Okay, so during the prime nectar flows, when conditions are perfect, you can get a nuke to raise its own queen. The biggest factor affecting queen quality is nutrition. It's whether that queen, when she was still a larva, was fed copious amounts of royal jelly. And in order to make that happen, you need plenty of nectar, plenty of pollen, and an abundance of very young nurse bees. So that's why I say if you're going to do this, you want to do it during the prime nectar flows, because that's when all that pollen and all that nectar is out there and the bees are bringing it in. And making up a nuke like this, okay, uncapped honey, nectar, and pollen, very young open brood from your best hive, because that's the genetics that you're going to get. They're going to make a cell out of that very young open brood. I'm talking milk brood and larvae that are about a day old. You can barely see them. If you've got eggs on the frame and you can see all the royal jelly in the bottom of the cells, that white milky royal jelly, and those larvae are swimming in it, that's the perfect frame for them to raise a queen. And then give them those two frames of capped and emerging brood with the young bees attached. And you might even want to think about shaking in more young bees. You want a nice, strong colony to raise a queen when you're not giving them a queen cell. Okay. And move those nukes to a different apiary if you possibly can. People are always, I think beekeepers think that they have to have their bees on their own property, but you don't. I don't have any hives at all on my property. All of my bees are on other people's properties because this isn't a great spot for bees. It's the woods, not enough wetlands, not enough resources.
I have a regulatory question for you, Landi.
Go for it.
Under the new regulations, who is responsible for violations, the landowner or the beekeeper?
The beekeeper, I'm pretty sure. The beekeeper. If Megan is still here, she can correct me if I am wrong, but those are, your bees. Basically you are, I mean, I rent property from other people for my apiaries, but I'm responsible for that.
No, it doesn't sound.
Molly?
Sound no.
Joe?
What did you say?
Okay, I'm not sure what was going on there, but if I find out differently from that, Justin, I'll let you guys know. But I'm pretty sure that's the case. So if you can move your nukes to another location, even for a day or two, it will prevent them from flying back to the original hive. So nukes raising a queen, raising their own queen. I did mention that it's really important that they have good nutrition. Pollen is very important. If you think that they don't have a variety of pollen, give them a pollen patty just as insurance. And the peak nectar flows, we talked about that too. So because nukes are very small colonies, now the colony that I've got taking care of the queen cells before they go in the mating nukes is enormous. It's 6 boxes high. So I've made that up using resources from multiple hives. Okay, so it's queen right, and it's got an excluder, and above the excluder is where I put those cells with lots of food, lots of frames of pollen, lots of young nurse bees. But if it's just a little nuke with 5 frames that are raising a queen, as the beekeeper, you have to make sure that they've got everything they need. Otherwise, you won't get a good queen. So it's, first you've got to have that good virgin that you're producing. And then the next step is she's got to go out and mate. So if it will ever stop raining, then we get the second part of that. So when do you check this nuke that is making the queen? Okay, if you give them a caged queen that you have purchased from another beekeeper, check them after 3 to 5 days. If you give them a mature queen cell that is about to hatch, check them after 2 weeks. That'll give that queen enough time to go out, mate, and come back and start laying. She may take as long as 3 weeks before you start seeing eggs. After that time, after 3 weeks, forget it. It's not going to be any good anyway. So that's your outer time limit. If the nuke is raising its own queen, after 3 weeks, you should have a virgin in there. You might have a mated queen. And after 4 weeks, you will definitely have a mated queen. If you don't, again, she'll never mate properly, and you've got to get rid of her and start over again. So wintering nukes, I am not sure whether you're allowed to do this. if you are at the upper limit of hives permitted on the size of tract that you've got. So if, for instance, you've got the 1/4 acre and you have your 3 production hives and your 1 nuke, I think that the regs that we have require you to combine that nuke with one of the production hives so that you can't overwinter it. But if, say, you had a 1/4 acre and you only have 2 production hives plus the nuke, you could probably, I think in that case, it would be okay to overwinter the nuke because it's like another hive. In fact, you could probably overwinter two nukes because that's sort of the equivalent in bees to a single, to a production hive. So I'm going to tell you how to do this. I'm going to tell you anyway how I do it. There are different ways of doing it. And you'll have to decide, if that's permitted in your particular circumstances. So the first thing you got to do if you're getting ready to overwinter nukes is you have to build them up. So here's where here's where adding a second story comes in. I super my nukes and I super them pretty extensively, not for honey production, except when I'm getting ready for winter. But it's not honey that I'm going to eat. It's honey that they're going to eat. If you can add a second story during the nectar flows, that's great because they'll make their own honey. If you can't do that during the nectar flows, you don't have enough time, then you're going to have to feed them in order to get them ready to get into the winter. But if you've got to feed them, the best way to do it is in their very own yard, separate from the production hives. And I'll tell you why. Robbing is a really big problem. We'll look at it a little bit more in more detail in a second. But what you want going into the winter is you want at least 7 or 8 medium frames, all covered in bees, plus a full box of honey on top. So I like to winter bees in 2-story hives at a minimum. And all of the ones I did last winter were 3-story. That's not necessary. They'll winter just fine as a 2-story hive, but they do better moving up in the winter as opposed to moving sideways. So it's kind of the same reason that, vertical Langstroth hives seem to do a lot better in our area in the winter than help me here, what's the name of it? The Kenyan hives, the long ones. Somebody. Okay. Sorry, brain fog.
The top bar hives?
Top bar hives. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay. 10 people are saying top bars. Gotcha. Okay. I should try and look at these. Landi, where do you get your medium nuke boxes? Brushy Mountain used to have them, but now they're out of business. I've made them, and Dottie Harvey will make them for you. You could get them from Grant too. Landlord should always have beekeepers sign hold harmless agreement. That's a good idea. Could we non-commercials overwinter nukes on top of full-size hives, separated with an inner cover and window screen? I don't know the answer to that, Joe. I honestly don't. I don't know if legally you're permitted to. That's something that Megan would. Is Megan here? Justin, tell us if Megan is here.
Megan left.
Megan left?
Yes. Okay, I'll send her a text.
Okay. All right, we do have questions for her. Grant has them. Yeah, Man Lake. Okay. So you can get nuke boxes from Grant. Medium nuke boxes, Adriana? Yeah, Adriana runs medium, so the answer to that has to be yes. Okay. All right. Yeah, she says yes. So in summer, that's what my nuke yard looks like. So I have a yard in Boonton Township that is exclusively devoted to nukes. And they winter very nicely there because they're in really good sun, and they've got a nice stand of cedar trees to the north, so that protects them from the wind. And you can see from this picture that they're actually 3 mediums high, and I'll show you how I wrap them. You wrap the top 2 mediums with tar paper. This is a setup with 2 stories. Photo credits. Pat took that picture. I'll put it on the PowerPoint. Sorry, Pat. Okay, Pat Harrison took that picture. You did no, how could Landi have taken the picture? I'm in the picture. Okay. Getting back to wrapping them for the winter. I like to butt them up to 2 of them together. Butt it up together, okay, with the entrances facing in opposite directions, and they will cluster kind of around the middle. They'll share warmth. So if you look at the cluster, they're not totally separated. They're actually hugging that shared inner wall. And they do beautifully this way. We had 100% survival, and I've done it many, many years. I almost never get worse than like 90% survival with these nukes. So right up against each other. You can't use a telescoping outer cover because you can't get the boxes right up next to each other because that cover interferes. So you have to have a migratory cover like these. Get that to go. Okay. So I have bubble wrap because, I've got a website and I ship a lot of honey, and I wrap the glass jars in bubble wrap. So I had the idea of, well, why not use bubble wrap to create an airspace before putting on the tar paper when I wrap up this hive. And that works very well. The bubble wrap is an insulating airspace. And outside the bubble wrap, I put, $15 a roll tar paper, the cheap stuff, and wrap it up just like a Christmas package. Now, what's on top is Homosoap moisture board. Okay. Also, Built Right is another brand. I don't think you can get it here though, but it's a kind of insulating soundboard that's very moisture absorbent. So I put that on top. I've got a cloth inner cover below it, cloth or plastic inner cover. It's just a piece of cloth like canvas, and I cut a hole in the middle. Joe says it must take time to wrap all those nukes. Yeah, it took us about a day to do them. Can you use tar paper? Yes, this is tar paper. But I put the bubble wrap under the tar paper. Okay, this is a close-up of that. So you can see the Homosoap board. I cut a little notch in it, and I cut that notch right where the space between 2 frames is in the top box. So the bees have that little exit. So even if we get a serious heavy snowfall that blocks the entrance, they can get out up there. And I cut the tar paper so that goes back. Now the outer cover goes over that, but it's propped up so that they can always get out. And we put a mouse guard on. Got to have a mouse guard, especially with the nukes. So that's what it looks like. This is 15-pound roofing paper, tar paper. That's what it is. And you just use a regular staple gun. first I stapled the bubble wrap on, and then I stapled the tar paper on, and only put it not all the way over the top, but you can see, so that homosoap board is exposed to the air and the moisture can wick out that way. That's how I control moisture buildup and prevent condensation in the nukes, so that, you know, the bees don't drown in their own metabolic moisture without doing the full ventilation thing that I do with my production hives, because that's just a little too cold for a small colony like a nuke. So that's how they get wrapped up and ready to go. Okay, before I go on, any questions about wrapping them up? I think we're good.
I'm just gonna throw my 2 cents in there, Landy, because
Go for it.
I love the way that you wrap them, but personally, I know who I am, and this is too much work. I'm gonna be honest. I'm lazy. This is not. I can't do this. What I do, and what some of the other beekeepers in my area do, is purchase what's called Reflectix, and you can pick it up at any Home Depot, like Home Depot, Lowe's hardware store, and it's that reflective insulation that you throw in your windshield to keep the sun out. And all you have to do with that is a nice single wrap around the 2 nukes so that they're butt up against each other, and the wrap encompasses both of them. And then you put on your shim, and then your inner cover and outer cover, and then you can feed them just like you would. It's far easier than this, but less pretty.
So, but I've got a question.
Yeah.
If it's doesn't it keep warmth out?
Yes
Because
and
it
no.
reflects the sun. You know, this black tar paper absorbs solar energy, so it's helping keep the nukes warm.
Right, but that assumes that the air around the bees needs to be warm to increase their survival. Statistically, it's more important to prevent drafts from hitting them than it is to keep the ambient temperature higher. So the single layer of insulation prevents your woodwork from acting as an entry point for wind or weather or any type of debris that could disrupt the colony.
I'd be interested in seeing how that works.
There's actually I'll post it to the site if it isn't already. There's a fantastic study that was done by the U.S. Department of Ag, where they removed the siding of boxes and replaced them with screening, and then overwintered the colonies with screens on all 4 sides. And believe it or not, it
And the
didn't.
Reflectix.
No. I mean, like the boxes were essentially open, so there was screens instead of a slat of wood. And believe it or not, having the entire colony basically exposed to the outdoors did not drastically decrease survival. What did were gusts of wind that would then disrupt the cluster.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, Charlie makes a good point here. You know, this is one way of doing it, but he's mentioning John's method, you know, using like the pink extruded polystyrene insulation. So that's another way of doing it. And you guys can experiment with all kinds of things. I'm just telling you what I do, and that over a lot of years I've had very good results using this method. Statistically, it works. You know, this year I brought 42 nukes through 100% survival with the nukes. Okay, so we've managed them through the growing season. We fed them. Do we talk about open feeding? I think if you possibly can, OpenFeeding nukes is a really good way of, I think it's in here. We're going to talk about it more. It's a really, really, excuse me, Tucker, my cat wants to get in on the act here. Good way of feeding nucleus colonies. But let's talk about some of the things that can go wrong with nukes. Swarming. This is why the biggest reason I've got like a problem with the idea of never supering a nuke, because you know, you just put like this huge this nice colony into a little tiny box, gave them a vigorous, beautiful young queen, and they have no place to go, right? Unless you give them additional room in which to expand, they will be very happy swarming. So that is, you know, that's why I super my nukes. It's one reason. Another issue with nukes is robbing. So if you look at this picture, you'll see the back row there are nukes, and in the front, they're production colonies. I had something like 40 odd mixed hives in this particular yard. Let's see, I've got a question here. Did your overwintered nukes exhibit the same urge to swarm as your full-size hives? My nukes have not swarmed much, nor have my full-size hives. And I think it's because I, one, reversed them very early in March, early March, and two, actually, I may even have started reversing in February, and two, I gave most of them another box. So far I've only had one swarm. Okay. Robbing. Problems with nukes. I had a huge issue with these nukes, and it resulted in the deaths of probably at least half of the nukes in this particular yard. We went into dearth. I had both nukes and production colonies in the same yard, and the production colonies began robbing out the nukes, and the nukes were unable to defend themselves. They and a lot of them died. So I even tried this robber guards on the nukes, and even this did not work, because what happened was there was still a great deal of fighting up at this little entrance, and enough bees died that they blocked the screen, and the bees were unable, the residents of the nukes were unable to get out, and they died. So what I do now is I have all of my nukes in one apiary, and I open feed, I barrel feed them. But even if I were to feed them conventionally in hive feeding, it would be okay because they're all nukes. So I'm not going to have any more serious robbing issues there than I would have if they were all production colonies, because they all have about the same opportunity to defend themselves. They're all roughly the same strength.
Question for you, Landi.
Yes.
So as we talked about at the beginning of this, in regards to the regulation, a lot of members are on a quarter of an acre, or maybe if they're lucky, half an acre. Do you feel that open feeding is something that can be productively accomplished in such a small area?
It depends on the actual site, Justin. I mean, I've open fed as short a distance as like 50 feet away. If you've got a stand of bushes in the way, or something else kind of blocking the, just as long as you're not feeding right in the yard, you can, you can do it successfully. But the biggest thing with open feeding is if there are people around, particularly not your own family members, but neighbors that could have access to it, you just can't do it. There are, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of bees accessing these feeders while they're being used. And it's just not appropriate for a very, for a very small urban area. If you've got like a little stand of woods behind, you could probably do it. But you must have the right situation. So basics of it, as I said, you must have a suitable location. It's got to be away from people. If you can get it, ideally is to have it about 100 yards away from the bee yard. You can reduce the distance if there's a physical barrier between. And I've had it be just fine even without a physical barrier. But the bees regard it as a nectar source. They're like these big, weird looking white flowers, and they'll do not the waggle dance, but the round dance, for their sisters, indicating a food source close by. And they'll rob those out within a couple of days. So it's a really good way of getting a lot of food into them in a short period of time, and building them up for the winter. Works great. One issue with it is you have to budget more sugar, because it's not just feeding your honeybees, you're feeding your neighbors' honeybees, and you're feeding all of the bald-faced hornets, yellow jackets. Everybody in the neighborhood comes. In some apiaries, I've even had bears come and access those feeders. Just one, I have problems with bears. Varroa mites. Varroa mites are a problem in every colony, right? Not just our production colonies, but also in the nucleus colonies. And the problem with nukes is that you can't always use the same treatments, because they're small, weak colonies by definition. So if you try and put on, for example, a couple of mite away quick strips, or a full dose of Apogard Thymol gel, you'll kill the nuke. You'll probably kill the queen. You'll kill a lot of brood. They're too small. They can't get away from those strong vapors. So my favorite treatment for nukes is Apivar, because it doesn't kill brood. It doesn't kill queens. And I'm typically not producing honey with the nukes. So, the issue of contaminating the honey, and because it's a long treatment period and then a certain waiting period, that's not an issue with nukes. Charlie is asking, is barrel feeding a practical option with a newly established nuke that is not sending out a lot of foragers? That's an interesting question, Charlie. I never really thought about that, but they have to have at least some foragers. And as soon as those foragers find the nuke, they will let everybody else know. And the nuke will recruit more foragers, even if they are younger bees. If there's something out there, they'll bump up the younger ones to be foragers sooner, because that's what they do. Small hive beetle. Yeah, Justin likes Apivar. Can anything bad happen if I reuse the same treatment? Well, it's a good question too. You have to consider, did you make up the nuke after you already treated the production hive with something? Because if you did, then that nuke has basically already been treated too. So I think I treated all the nukes in fall, and then I treat them again. This year we treated with oxalic acid vaporization going into winter, when they were broodless in November. And that worked really well. It worked great. So I was able to alternate the vaporization treatment with Apivar. Because the thing that can happen, Justin, of course, is you can create resistance. You can create resistance. And so it's always good to try and alternate treatments. If you're going to alternate with one of the organic acids, a half dose of Apigard works on nukes. I've done that, half dose. And you can also call the manufacturers and ask them. Okay, small hive beetles. Small hive beetles are an issue with weak colonies. So you may, if you really have a problem with them, you may need to use some kind of a trap. I found that a 5 medium frame nuke is strong enough to handle small hive beetles. So I don't have an issue with small hive beetles on 5 medium frames. If you were using, if for instance, you had a really small nuke, like a mini mating nuke or a 2 deep frame nuke, that might not be able to defend itself against small hive beetle. I think it might be too small. Thermoregulation. So this is mostly an issue with mating nukes because queen cells are very, very sensitive to overheating, which is why most mating yards are in the shade. That's done deliberately. You don't want the sun, baking those queen cells. They can be damaged. So, so you want, to make sure that the nukes are nice and strong, because the stronger the nuke, the better able they are to thermoregulate. And you may want to put them in the shade if you're raising queens, if they're for raising queens. Yes, nuke problems tend to be self-correcting. If you don't make it up right, if it doesn't have enough bees, if it doesn't have a good queen, it's going to die. It just won't survive. If you don't feed it enough, it won't survive. So if you get your nuke into the winter and out of the winter to the other side, it's a good nuke by definition. I had one new beekeeper got so excited about Tucker. My cat wants to get in on the action here. He has something to say about nukes. I'm having to push him off. So I had one young friend got so excited about nukes that in fall she broke down all her full-size production colonies and made them all into nukes. And then tried to winter all the nukes, but of course she hadn't, she did that really late in the season, so she hadn't built them all up, and a bunch of them died. So you have to remember that, number one, nukes are a tool. They're an adjunct to your production hives. They're there to provide queens. They're there to prevent swarming. They're there to help build up colonies if they need more bees or brood, or a new queen. But every frame of bees and brood that you take away from your full-size colony is X many pounds of honey that you're not getting from that colony. So when you take those frames away is really important. If you're interested in honey production, just recognize that making a lot of nukes decreases your honey production. So, so you have to keep that in mind. It's not just, it's not just make nukes. They're a tool. And whoops, I'm supposed to, hold on. Justin, turn off the recorder.
What recorder? Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay.
So I'm gonna take control to skip this slide because we already saw it at the beginning.
Oh, we did see it at the beginning. Okay.
Right.
My,
Yep.
my,
That way people can ask questions and whatever else, and we can keep going.
okay, good. All right. Because my daughter doesn't want my grandson's picture to be on the internet. But that's my son, and he's fine with it. And I like his tattoo. Okay, questions? Did I miss any questions? Do we have questions? People are typing. Some people, multiple users are typing. Okay. Adriana makes nukes with 2 swarms she caught. And yes, I didn't even mention that, but that's a really good point. You can, if you catch a swarm, you put them in a nuke box and you've got a nuke. Thank you, Ron, for coming. I love that little message at the bottom. Multiple users are typing. Can we use organic acid in a nuke? Oxalic acid in a nuke? Yes. Yes, you can. But like any of the acids, you've got to be careful. I used oxalic acid vaporization in broodless nukes in November. So Pat Harrison and I went through all of them, and these were 3-story nukes. Okay, in kind of early to mid-November, they had almost no brood. And we did the vaporization, and it worked very nicely. And it didn't damage the bees. The bees were fine. So Barbara caught a swarm, but she's not sure she got the queen. You're going to have to see if you've got eggs. And remember, too, if it was an after swarm and you had a virgin, it might be another 3 weeks. It might be 3 weeks from the time you caught the swarm until you see eggs. If it's longer than that, you need to give them another queen. Anything special on taking care of swarms, nukes? No, it's a colony. You want to make sure that they're queen right. So, if it was a virgin, you got to make sure that she actually gets a chance to mate. This year, there has been so much wet weather that I think a lot of queens are not mating well or not mating properly. So that's an issue. Good stuff. It's especially helpful because I'm on mediums too. Yeah, mediums are great. I love them. And Chris says, what's latest month in our area you would recommend to make up an overwintered nuke? Well, August, if you make it really strong and feed it very heavily. But, it kind of depends, it depends on how well you make it up to begin with. How many resources are you willing to commit to it? You could make up a perfect overwintered nuke in October, but you're taking honey and you're taking bees from a production colony. You're just creating this nuke. So you may kill your production colony by doing it. Help, when will swarm season end this year? Steve, I've been keeping bees for a while, but I'm not God. I don't know these things. Oh boy. Do you recommend using a half dose of Formic Pro on a nuke?
I've done this.
I don't. Have you done it successfully?
I have. Well, that's the key word. I've done it. and the manufacturer says that you can do it, but you really, unless that nuke is the strongest nuke in the world, it's not strong enough.
Yeah.
Um,
You really,
I-
you can risk killing a lot of brood and the queen.
Yeah, and what happened for me wasn't that the hive died, but that the acid was so strong, and they stopped. She stopped laying for a while, and there was a more dead than I'm comfortable with from a treatment. Just don't do
Yeah.
it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I do not like. I haven't put formic on nukes for years. I use it on my production colonies. I'm fine with it there, but um, it's so if the temperature is even just a little too high, you're just going to kill a lot of bees. Even the Formic Pro, which is better than the Might Away Quick Strips, it's still kind of too strong. Steve, this has been a crazy swarm year. In fact, you're starting keeping bees in like a very unusual year. Believe me, it's not always quite this challenging. Adriana asks if we can talk about the number of mediums for nukes throughout the season. So you start with 2, and then, yeah, I just keep supering them, Adriana. Typically, I want to go into winter with at least 2. I like 3 because then when I make up my nukes for sale, I've got extra boxes to use as mating nukes. But you don't have to have 3. I have wintered them as 4 high, 4 mediums high. It kind of depends on the queen. If she's pumping out bees like crazy, you can wind up with a nuke that's, kind of the equivalent of 2 mediums, 2 full-size mediums. Steve has had multiple swarms from one hive, like 4 from one hive. Bond says they will abscond if the formic acid is too strong, and that is true. And Adriana is still seeing parasitic bees in a strong hive. What do you mean? What's parasitic bees? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not sure what she means by that. Megan is back, and Adriana is probably clarifying her comment. Parasitic mycin. Are you talking about acute paralysis, chronic bee paralysis syndrome, I think is what she means. Yeah, chronic bee paralysis. Adriana has had this virus in her hive. And you'll see like black, very dark bees, and they're trembling. But it's a virus. You can't really do much of anything about it. Seen a lot more of it in the past 10 years. Before that, I don't think we ever saw it before. And it doesn't usually kill them, but there's no treatment.
While we have Megan.
We have Megan. Megan.
Yes. Oh, Megan, we have questions for you.
Great.
So
Sorry, my phone died earlier.
Oh, okay. So back to the question of they can't really winter nukes in New Jersey. But what if, for instance, you've got somebody with a 1/4 acre, and instead of having 3 full-size hives on the 1/4 acre, they've got 2. So they're allowed 1 nuke, but they could have 3 full-size colonies. Can they winter that 1 nuke?
Yeah, I guess I would assume that, you're saying 3 full-size colonies, it would mean that or smaller. So,
Yeah. So they could get a credit basically and have an overwintered nuke. And what about, not supering nukes can really lead to swarming. Do you think we have a shot at maybe getting that reg changed to permit nukes to be supered?
I have no idea about changing the regs. I know that when I first interviewed for this position, I honestly told them that, these were new regs and we'd have to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And so that might be one of the ones that doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely going to be a list of things in the coming years that I think will be revisited.
Okay.
To what extent, I'm not quite sure, but yeah, that one's one of those questionable ones.
Yeah. Not only is the reg ambivalent in terms of its meaning, but it's, whether if anybody is going to overwinter nukes, they have to be supered. Otherwise, their chances of survival are very low. And during the growing season, they've got to be supered too, or they're going to swarm. So it's definitely something that it would be good to revisit. Did we want to ask Megan anything else while we've got her with her phone working?
My phone is actually still dead. My state actually one of the worst things ever. It'll be finished in 7 hours and 21 minutes. So I'm on my computer now.
Okay. Justin, did we have other questions for Megan? I keep thinking we're missing something.
Maybe. I'm working. I have no idea.
All right, come back. Let's see. Okay, Adriana says something. The regulations say something on the lines of managing swarming, so that's a good point. So splitting and creating nukes should fall within swarm management. That's a good point there,
Yeah, it's on page 13 or 14 of the regs.
I don't have them in front of me. But Adriana is making the point that, Steve's asking, can a small beekeeper legally sell a nuke? Yes, provided Megan inspects it first. There's nothing to say you can't sell a nuke, but it must be inspected by the state.
Oh, I remember the question. Megan, in a situation where you are keeping bees on someone else's property, who is liable for the bees and what responsibilities do the property owners have to notify the public or make sure that they are protected?
I don't know if that's in the bee regs about landowners.
What would you think the answer to that would be?
Well, so like on page 14 of the regs, it talks about violations. And it says notice a violation by the beekeeper or landowner. So I guess I don't know. I think it depends on like what you're trying to talk about. So like if we're talking about registration, I think that solely lies on the beekeeper. I don't think you should penalize a landowner who's like trying to help out bees and giving people, more space to have their bees so that they're in a safe environment. I think like trying to keep water on the property should be a conversation between the beekeeper and the landowner. I mean, it probably ultimately comes back to the beekeeper.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's because, if the beekeeper didn't have bees there, the landowner wouldn't be responsible for anything, having to do with bees. So it's the the fact that the beekeeper has chosen that location to keep his bees, if there are any problems arising out of the fact that the bees are there, it really should be up to the beekeeper to fix those problems or take responsibility for them. That would be, I think, where we would come from, but I don't know. Steve asks if giving a swarm to another beekeeper is okay without inspection. And Charlie, who knows the law, points out that the landowner is always on the hook. So that sounds like I'm probably wrong. Steve, I think that the law requires that if nukes or queens are sold in the state of New Jersey, they must be inspected by the state. But if you're giving bees to another beekeeper, that's not selling them, right, Megan?
Yeah, I don't know exactly the wording on it. If it says, I do think it just says sold, because I did
Yeah.
search and there was nothing in there about gift or giving or give or trade. I know in Delaware the law was if you give, trade, barter, exchange, they had to be inspected, but it looks like in New Jersey that it's just if it's sold.
Yeah, I'm like 99% sure it's just for sale. So Steve, if you want to give, Steve has an abundance of swarms this year. So it sounds like if you want to give them away, go for it. People are asking for money to replace frames. And no, made me sign a hold harmless agreement. Jean is pointing out that the landlord where she has bees made her sign a hold harmless agreement. Oh, Steve did give away his swarms. Yeah, some, I mean, you can come up with various agreements with landlords. Some of my apiaries were just a handshake, gallon of honey a year, a handshake. And some of them I had, I drew up legal contracts depending on what they wanted.
I always suggest some type of agreement because I know my first experience putting bees on someone else's property. I went into it thinking, oh yeah, this is great. I'll put my bees here. They'll help your garden. And then at the end of the season, they were like, all right, where's all my honey from those colonies? I saw you pull boxes.
Wow.
And it was like, wait, you think you're getting all the honey? So it was one of those things that I definitely had to rethink how that exchange happened. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm like really clear with people. I tell them you're getting a gallon of honey a year plus a 20% discount on any of my products. And that's what you get as a landlord. I've never had a problem, but I think I'm lucky.
Adriana, the thing you said about giving a swarm to people and they're asking for replacing frames, something that I've just done in the past is exchanged frames with brand new that haven't been used. That way you're not transferring disease at all. And then there's no money exchange as far as something being sold.
It's a good point. Okay.
I actually have one more question. So I used to live in a neighborhood with neighbors that were not fond of there being colonies because they believed that yellow jackets lived in those colonies. And if I am a beekeeper and I happen to have some colonies swarm and it is best management practices to place those colonies into nukes, but I have now found myself in violation of the regulations. My neighbor then calls up and says, oh, that's too many hives over there. I knew it. How will the state handle a situation like that? Are we to strictly abide by guidelines regardless of the management effects on our colonies? Or will the state provide some understanding in situations where it's obvious that the beekeeper was acting in the best interests that at the time.
So you're just pretty much you're asking about like the example is if you have too many colonies on your property.
What I'm asking is that if there is a situation that requires a beekeeper to violate a regulation to preserve the health of their colonies, how will the state look upon that situation?
I think it depends on the situation. I also think it depends, as bad as this sounds, like the squeaky wheel gets the oil. If it gets brought to us by like a legislator, things are going to get handled a lot quicker just because obviously when there's a lot of pressure coming, there's going to be things that are handled, if that makes sense. But there's only one state APRIS, so usually by the time it gets to me, it's usually starting to resolve itself. An example would be we had an issue in the Northeast chapter where a beekeeper had 20 colonies on, this just happened this week, where I was notified by like a county health official that there was a complaint that this owner has 20 colonies on his quarter acre. And so
Wow.
that's in violation of the regs. And so he was unaware of the regs. And so the Northeast branch of the New Jersey Beekeepers wrote him a formal letter telling him, you know, that he was violating this regulation and that he needed to move his colonies. This was before I had even heard about the problem, but Northeast was already trying to handle it. And so he said he'd need about a week, but he would have another location that he could move them to. And so in that type of situation, we'd rather work with educating the person and making sure that, you know, they weren't just blatantly doing it out of spite or whatever, but that they truly didn't know or understand. So I think that's not a situation where we'll pursue finding him if he's, you know, within a week making an effort to get everything resolved.
So in that example, the chapter had stepped in and issued a notice.
Yeah.
As a chapter, is this an additional responsibility that we have to burden, policing our members and issuing notices? And
no, I wouldn't say that it's a burden that you guys take on as a chapter, but I definitely think as there's different chapters, you guys are definitely one of the first resources for beekeepers. You know, everyone in this meeting is a beekeeper because you're able to talk amongst yourself about, hey, this is what I'm seeing. And you're like little ambassadors for the beekeeping community because we always want when people in the public think of beekeepers, we want them to have good thoughts, you know, yummy honey, pollinating, stuff like that, right? We don't want them to think, oh, my neighbor, but like if we work together as a large group, because again, there's only one of me, I think it's a good way as like our little organizations or our clubs can kind of, I guess it's branches, be like an ambassador and say, hey, I noticed this was something going on in your yard. The regs really say this, you should check it out or whatever.
That makes sense. I think, you know, the type of situation Justin's talking about is sort of like what happened to Steve this year. He had, you know, 4 swarms or 5 swarms come out of one hive. He's a new beekeeper, so this is his first year, and his, you know, his first colonies are swarming just because it happens to be a very swarmy year. So if he's on a quarter acre and he's already got 2 production hives there, 2 full-size hives, and he gets 4 swarms, if he catches them all and puts the swarms in nukes, now he's got 2 full-size hives and 4 nukes. So really, to be within the letter of the law, all right, let's pretend he's got 3 full-size hives, okay, and he catches 4 swarms. So 3 full-size hives and 4 nukes. He can't have those 4 nukes. So legally, he's supposed to only catch 1 swarm. So, but of course, it's not a good thing if he just ignores the other 3 swarms, you know, if it's in his ability. to catch them if they're not like up in a 50-foot high tree. So we want him to catch the swarms, but he can't keep the swarms.
Yeah, I definitely think that's where just having a conversation with the beekeeper and, making sure they understand the situation, and if they have a plan in place and they follow through, I think that's fine.
So he basically, but the state wouldn't come after him if he's in the process of finding homes for those extra swarms.
No, I mean, again, there's only one of me. And so, I imagine the state coming after people who deliberately know they have American foul brood and want to get rid of equipment, but also want to make some money while they're getting rid of equipment.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, that's just like your basic low-life scum.
Yeah, so I could see the state pursuing things like that. Someone who is making an effort to do the right thing, they're not gonna try to come down on.
That makes sense. All right, guys. Do we have any more burning questions?
I like Norman's comment.
I just going down here, I'm just seeing it. The golden rule of don't be an ass generally helps mitigate those decisions. Yes. Love it. And Adriana wrote, say a beekeeper with 1/4 acres starts with 3 colonies to prevent swarming. The beekeeper splits 2 hives, so now there are 5. By the end of the season, the splits are combined back to 3 for wintering. Shouldn't that be considered swarm management? That is, well, she's got a good point. It is swarm management, but
Yeah, so eggs aren't perfect. We still need to figure out work in them. And kind of see where we need to make changes these coming years.
Yeah. So that's I guess one area that maybe we should be looking at a little bit more.
Can I just chime in here? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're dealing with a lot of untested legal concepts here. And, I made it earlier, I made reference to the fact that the landowner is always on the hook. And, I should also say that regardless of any hold harmless agreements, that the landowner cannot contract his way out of his own negligence. And so whether was the landlord negligent or not, well, that's a legal question, and ultimately nobody wants to be hauled into court to test the law as he as an individual is concerned.
Mm.
So, what we're dealing with here is a whole lot of potential legal issues which may or may not ever face the test of a full litigation in front of a judge, where it would then become a decision which would be recorded, written, drafted, and become the source of guidance for everybody else. It ain't going to happen that way. So there are always going to be these questions involved, and I think most of them are going to resolve themselves either through somebody's insurance company or just go away or whatever. And in the meantime, everybody is going to debate as to what their liability is and what are the interpretations of these regulations, which may never get resolved. The only thing that I would say is whenever there's an ambiguity, that the courts always give that ambiguity the most liberal interpretation possible in favor of the person who did not write. I hope I'm making myself clear. The person, in other words, if the state wrote the regulations, that it'll be given the least restrictive interpretation by the courts.
Okay.
So I know there's a lot of debate going back and forth right now because so much of this is new and it's untested, and it may always be that way.
Well, Okay, thank you,
My
Charlie.
2 cents. My 2 cents.
We'll just have to kind of play it out and see,
Yeah, that's
see
how
what
it works.
happens. Yeah, see what
The only thing I
happens.
can tell you is from my own personal perspective, I don't get along with next door neighbors on one side, and I would really hate to be on the receiving end of any trouble that they would want to make.
Mm.
So, you know, this is something we all may have to bear in mind.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten any complaints with your name attached, so that's good.
Yeah, well, this week anyway.
Well, no, trust me, I've got a few bee complaints in the past month, so you one of them.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Landy. Thank you.
And I guess we'll sign off and hope that we actually get to see each other in person in the not too distant future, and that we can do it safely. So, but in the meantime, we have Justin to thank for putting this all together for us.
Thank
Thanks,
you very much, Landy. It was a great talk.
Thank you, Justin. Very nice.
All right. Good night, everybody. Enjoy.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.